If you'll stand up, please, and we'll see they're scattered throughout the crowd here. If you have any questions, they can answer everything. Not me. We're glad to have you here. If you are not a member of the Historical Society, we'd love to have you be a member. In fact, Johanna Ellis is in the back, and she can take your membership, which is only $25 for the normal one. And she does it on all kinds of mediums, including a credit card. All these marvelous mediums. Ours is an all-volunteer organization. We live on memberships and donations. We'd like to have some large grants, but we don't have any large grants. And we are having, I don't know if any of you have seen this on the back table. I hope you signed up at the back table, by the way, when you came in. But we're having a couple of benefits here for the Laguna Beach Historical Society. And let me get these right for you. If you dine at Tortilla Republic, anytime during the month of June, 10% of your bill will be donated to Laguna Beach Historical Society. But you need this orange one, and there's some at the back table. And I'm sure we'll have some at the bungalow, too, which is open. Our Murphy Smith Bungalow, which is our headquarters, is open Friday, Saturday, and Sunday from 1 to 4 p.m. And we'll have them there, too. The other one is the Lumberyard Restaurant. It's just one night. It's Wednesday, May 24th, and 10% of the bill will go to Laguna Beach Historical Society. So I'd appreciate it if you could do one of those and pick up a coupon. I guess you can't do it unless you have the coupon. So be sure to pick them up. If we need more, we'll get more. Our next program is going to be in September. I think it's September 7th, and it's about Pancho Barnes, a colorful character. We have some marvelous programs, and that will be the next one. We usually have a lot during the year, but during the summer we take off for obvious reasons in this tourist town. It's difficult to operate during the summer. At this point, I'd like to start the program. And our speaker here tonight is Mary Rabe. And I tried to get a lot of information about her to introduce her, and I didn't get very much information. So I'll tell you, she's going to talk all about the St. Clair family and their influence. But one of the things that's very important in her life is she and her husband have owned a St. Clair house for the last 17 years. And she'll show you some pictures of that. The house was designed by the architect Aubrey St. Clair for his brother Malcolm St. Clair. And it's been modified some, but she'll talk all about that, and she has a real history with this. So would you please join me in welcoming Mary Rabe?
Thank you. Thank you. We'll start with the house will be all tied together with one family, and that was the St. Clairs. The father was Norman St. Clair, and the two sons were Aubrey and Malcolm St. Clair, and we'll go over each one of those people. Norman St. Clair was born in Birmingham, England. He studied architecture and worked as a draftsman in England. He was an architect in Boston, Denver, Salt Lake City, and San Francisco. He moved to Los Angeles in about 1900. He was 37 at that time. He came to Laguna Beach to paint. He was a member of the Los Angeles Painters Club and the California Art Club. He exhibited at the Mark Hopkins in San Francisco, the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts, the Blanchard Gallery, California Art Club, and the Los Angeles County Museum of Art. And here's a picture of him. And here's one of his pictures. According to Ray Redfern, a similar watercolor was recently sold for $4,800. The reason the price is so low is over the years, the colors have faded. They're watercolors, and if they're exposed to the sun, they can't take that. And this is one that's quite faded. It's a beach scene, probably here in Laguna Beach. And this is another one. We think that this is a hill in the back, and that part of it is North Laguna. It looks like a hill from North Laguna. And this is an oil, or excuse me, a watercolor. And if you have an oil or a watercolor, don't let the sun shine on them because it does destroy them. And here's a picture of the beach again. Norman St. Clair passed away of tuberculosis when he was 48 years old. He left behind 4 sons, and we're going to talk about 2 of them. Now we've seen how Norman St. Clair brought plein air art painting to Laguna Beach. Norman St. Clair had 4 sons. His son Malcolm grew up here, and later Malcolm brought movies to his hometown, Laguna Beach. Malcolm St. Clair was born in 1897 and passed away in 1952. He was a silent movie actor, a writer, a director, and a producer. He acted and directed for Max Sennett. He wrote and directed with Buster Keaton, and Mel and Daryl Zanuck devised Rin Tin Tin series. This is a picture of him. This is the little information about Tom Moore. He was a painter, he was an actor. May 1st, 1883 was his birth date. February 12th, 1955, he passed away. He was Irish-born American actor and director. He appeared in at least 186 modern pictures from 1908 to 1954. And he was most recently, frequently cast as the romantic lead. He starred in silent movies and some of the talkies. And here's Buster Keaton. And this is a picture here in Laguna Beach. They were shooting a movie here, and I don't know what beach it is. If anybody does know, let us know. Here's Rin Tin Tin. And this is interesting information because he starred in Lighthouse by the Sea. Malcolm St. Clair and Daryl Zanuck created Rin Tin Tin. They built a lighthouse at Crescent Point, and it starred Rin Tin Tin, and it co-starred Louise Van Zendig. Douglas Gerald was also in the cast. Male German Shepherd dog rescued from a World War I by Lee Duncan was nicknamed him Rindy, often hyphenated as Rin Tin Tin. Rin Tin Tin was an immediate box office success and went on to appear in 27 Hollywood films. The profitability made Warner Brothers Studios a success and advanced the career of Daryl Zanuck. Rin Tin Tin may have received the most votes for the Academy Awards for Best Actor, but the Academy determined that a human should win, unfortunately, so he didn't get it. This is a scene from The Lighthouse, and this is Rin Tin Tin and Louise Fazenda. The movie was made the same year our house was built, and that was in 1924. This is a picture in the yard of William Wendt of Malcolm St. Clair and Louise Fazenda. She was a substar to Rin Tin Tin in a number of movies. Daryl and Malcolm made Paramount Pictures what it is today. Since Malcolm helped make Daryl a success, Daryl helped Malcolm during the Depression. And here's a picture, that's Daryl Zanuck on the left, and we don't know who it was. If anybody does know who the person in the middle is, if they could let us know, we'd appreciate it. And that's Malcolm St. Clair on the left, on the right. He was quite tall. This is Louise Brooks. Louise Brooks was a star at the time, and two on the left are sketches by Malcolm, and she wanted the lead in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, but did not get it. After losing the lead, she tried to destroy Malcolm. Here's Louise Brooks in the Canary murder case and Lum and Abner. They were produced by Malcolm in 1929. Here's A Gentleman Prefer Blondes. And this is a silent film version of Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, and it was filmed in 1928. Alice White got the leading role, not Louise Brooks. Malcolm was voted top 10 director that year. This is Laurel and Hardy Films. Malcolm did most of the last series. Uh-oh, my battery is running low. No. Right here. Malcolm did most of the last series of Laurel and Hardy. It's hard to see, but it says directed by Malcolm St. Clair. Joan Crawford is probably known to many of you, and Malcolm St. Clair directed her too. Malcolm St. Clair replaced the director, Ted Wilde, in this Harold Lloyd movie because Ted Wilde walked out. Buster Keaton and Malcolm St. Clair co-directed and co-wrote The Blacksmith. We just found out how a Laguna Beach person bought movies to Laguna. Aubrey St. Clair, another son of Norman, was 7 years older than Malcolm. He became an architect and helped shape the look of Laguna Beach. Historical homes, commercial and civic buildings in Laguna Beach were designed by Aubrey Fleetwood St. Clair. He was an architect, lived from 1890 to 1966. Aubrey and his son Gordon. There's Aubrey on the right-hand side, Gordon on the left. This is one of the first houses Aubrey probably designed in Laguna Beach. And this is where his brother Malcolm lived in Laguna. It was one great room. It was one great room, the kitchen and the loft.
Where was that located?
It's located on 489 Pearl Street in Laguna Beach. That's the house that I live in now, but it doesn't look anything like that. You'll see what it looks like a little bit later on. But it was about the only house that was in that district at the time, in that area. This is a water district that Aubrey designed that. And this is the greeter's corner. You'll notice the round arches and windows. And this is Ann Kristoff's office in South Laguna. And you'll notice the roof line right here, and this roof line, and this roof line. And then you'll see it later on when I show you how our house was designed. This is Betty Davis's house. And this is the fire department that was built in 1931. And this is now called the Trevina Restaurant. It was originally Laguna Federal Savings and Loan. Aubrey did 3 remodels of the building, and it's been remodeled back again now to look as it did when Aubrey originally built it. And this, of course, is the City Hall. And the arch in the City Hall is not typical of a round arch in that design. This is the Turney residence. Aubrey actually had his office upstairs in this building, and it's now called the English Garden. This was the next Laguna Federal in Savings. We now know it as the Wells Fargo Bank building. Notice this is an 8-sided building. The St. Clair family have made a mark on Laguna. Now we'll talk about Malcolm's house. The reason I know about this house is because I live in it, and that's why I know the address so well too. My husband and I have lived there for 17 years and are the 4th owner of the house. Malcolm was the original owner. It was built in 1924, and it was built for Malcolm St. Clair, and it was designed by his brother, Aubrey. And this is his wife, Malcolm's wife, standing on the spot where the house was eventually built. It's 12 years after Norman St. Clair died, so Laguna was still natural when he painted it. Dee was Malcolm's first wife. And this is the house. Doesn't look like that anymore, fortunately. This is a little, but interestingly enough, our grandson thought it was a barn when he first saw it, so I guess maybe it still does. And this is one of the chairs. It's a loft in windows. You'll notice the loft. That's the loft is right up here. And this is a decoration hanging from the loft. You'll notice how the chair is placed. That's how Malcolm always placed furniture, because that's how things were done in Hollywood. And here's 2 pieces showing it's the same furniture, same piece of furniture. Dee and Malcolm in the chair for a picture, and you notice the furniture is placed in the same way. And this picture is taken about the same way too. And the office part is in the front, and the back bedroom were added. The office was probably at the bedroom at the time it was added. You'll notice the 2 small windows in the bedroom, the back bedroom. It has 1 big window now, and that's because at the time that this was built, it was 2 small bedrooms. Now they added a fireplace. And that's Malcolm and his wife standing right by the house. And then you'll also notice in the back, that's a house that was built as a neighbor house. And then you'll also notice this is a power line, one of the first power lines to go in this area. And then shingles and a garage are added. You notice the 2 off-center roof lines? They're both the same style roof line, which I thought was pretty interesting. They do look the same, and from the inside, if you notice the roof line, the same angle. That's the artist's window on the side of the house, and the garage was a 2-car garage. And that puts the garage, places that out to Carmelita Street. Here's another picture of the house. You notice the wood, the dirt, that's Pearl Street, what eventually became Pearl Street. And there's a little tree in the front. That's what we're pointing at here. And that eventually became a huge tree. And unfortunately, it had to be removed because it got a disease that comes to pine trees. Now here's the inside of the house. The left picture shows the fireplace, and the fireplace had been replaced. And it probably fell down during an earthquake. And there are bricks buried in the soil outside of the house. They were uncovered when a new drain pipe was installed. On the right is the kitchen in the back, and it was a very small kitchen at the time. The stairs have since been enclosed. That's the chair Malcolm used in the previous shots, the chair on the left. You can see the dining room was underneath the stairs. This is George Barringer and Dee. He was pretty well known in a movie. He's shown here with Dee. And this is Douglas Gerard. He was in Rin Tin Tin movie, The Lighthouse. And there's light above the door, right there. And that's now the downstairs, on the outside of the house, and the downstairs on the door. This is Tom Moore, who was pointed out previously, and he appears to be reading something in the house. He did over 100 movies, and he was always cast as the romantic leading man. In his era, he was a big, big name actor. Now this is time has passed and the tree has grown some. Malcolm sold the house to Nita Warwick and Mary Fannin. And we don't know very much about those two people. If anybody here knows anything about them, that would be appreciated. This is the back kitchen. The door on the left goes into a bedroom. That's this one right here. The downstairs bathroom is even with the kitchen. The two windows on the top are the loft, and the ground appears to be just dirt. This is when it was redone. And that's an olive tree. And you'll notice that they added on a bedroom upstairs, a large bedroom.
What year was that, Mary?
It was 1947 that they, according to city permits, that they added on that bedroom. Now this is Andy Allison's Bungalow Hunters. It used to be in the paper, and Andy gave us a proof after we bought the house. This was in 1999. And there's a quote in here which is small to see, but it says, "The house is a true Laguna treasure." And Jane Jantz said that. We believed her, and we bought the house because of that. Well, we still believe her. Now, this is what the house looks like. Close to now. This was just a short time ago, before we had to have the tree removed. But as you can see, it has a lot more style than it did in the first picture. This is the backyard. Now, this is a very recent picture of the backyard. This goes into the dining room. And when we bought the house, we made a dining room out of it. It had been two very small rooms. And the house is the same as 1948 as far as the outside lines go. But we added 14 square feet to the bathroom upstairs, and that is still under the peak, which our architect was very good about that. He said that's under the peak, because he wanted to keep it in the same style. And the photo shows how the upstairs addition fits in with the corner roof. You'll notice this. And you'll remember that this was just a kind of roof looking for a place. This is the way it looked to me. And now it's found its spot. So I think that maybe Aubrey St. Clair might have designed that. the whole thing because he had the same inclination to add a room up here eventually, which would close that roof off. Now, this is the inside of the house. Now, this is what the house looks like right now. And this is after the tree fell. The tree got sick, and so most of the tree was already gone, so we had to have it taken out. And you'll notice also that the mailbox looks similar to the house. This is a quick overview of what you've learned. And the St. Clairs brought the plein air painting, movies, and unique architecture to Laguna Beach. And this is a little bit of what they've done. And thank you for your time. Yes.
Yes. We're going to take questions. Yeah, okay. We're going to take questions and comments, but this is going out over Cox Cable Channel 852. So either somebody from the back or I'll come here and give you a microphone. If you don't have the microphone, they don't hear at home.
Mary, that's an E-rated structure,
Yes.
and you did some remodeling to it. I'm wondering if you would tell us the benefits of having your house on the historic inventory and how easy or difficult it was to get through the building process when you did your changes to the house. Thank you.
Okay, since we weren't changing the roof line at all we had to have done, according to what the contractor told us, is we had to have it just brought before design review without a lot of information because we weren't changing the lot line, the roof line. I think the roof line is the most important thing in older homes. If you don't change where the roof is placed and the fact that nothing goes out over that roof line, then you usually don't have any.
There's a lot of confusion about the historic inventory.
Yeah. It's on the E list and it's. Yeah, there's a lot of benefits. Some of the benefits are, we're on the Mills Act and on the E list. I guess you don't have to go before, if you're going to change something like we did, you don't have to pay a lot to the city for those permits, because you do have to have permits in order to get 14 square feet even added on upstairs, which added a big shower, which was nice. But we didn't change the looks of the place at all. And if you get that money back that you would have had to pay otherwise for permits, it's a help.
And the Mills Act is quite a lot less taxes that you have to pay every year, right?
Right, it's less in property tax. And as I understand, from what I can tell in the Mills Act, it seems to be based upon what your tax would be in 76 at that time.
When Prop 13, no.
Prop 13,
Oh,
yes.
really? Oh, okay.
Yeah, pre-Prop 13. Yes, Jim?
I just have a quick suggestion. You asked who for suggestions of who that might be between the father and mother of the house when the house was built, the elder Sinclairs, and I suggest that it might possibly be John Wayne.
No, I don't think it's either one.
Then I don't know.
We have a question from Glenna.
Excuse me, I'm interested in the foundation. I lived in an old house in Berkeley, and at some point we had to, it was just sitting on, very little in the way of a foundation. And so we had a rather expensive retrofit. what did you have to do to the foundation, or had the work already been done?
It's already done. Yeah, we had it done. It was done when we bought it. Herb can probably say more about that than I can. What do you know about that, Herb? Can you say anything?
I've crawled under that house many times, and the foundation looks like it's been done in pieces, not like it wasn't all done at one time. But there is a foundation around the entire house. And where the kitchen, the new addition is, that's actually a slab. So it was only a crawl space under the old part of the house.
Can you put it back to a picture instead of that would be, if possible. Another question? Anybody else?
I thought we had somebody here tonight that lived in another St. Clair house, and they could talk about that.
Oh, you did? Yes. Here we go.
Mary, in answer to the question of the person in the middle with Daryl F. Zanuck and Mal, that's H.C. Whitver, W-H-I-T-V-E-R. It's written on the back of the photo that I loaned you to make that. Okay. Yeah, I just happened to look at it yesterday. Yeah. I'll look at that. I don't know whether his face looks like he could have been an actor that made a lot of facial expressions, but I didn't Google him to see if he was an actor or a director or whatever. But H.C. Whitver, W-H-I-T-V as in Victor, E-R.
Shall we move by that picture?
The,
We
the
could.
peop-
And
the
go
people
back.
behind Eric there, I think we're going to say something about their house.
Good. Here we go.
Hi, I'm Rich Thompson. This is my wife, Monica, and we actually own Aubrey St. Clair's home on Jasmine Street that was constructed in 1921. And Aubrey drew and added on many sections to the home and actually built in 1945 his architectural studio adjacent to the house. So we love the home, and it's just kind of a very, very interesting, quirky piece of property. We've become very friendly with the remaining St. Clair family. Ross St. Clair, who we purchased a home from, was the great-great-grandson of Norman St. Clair Sr.
The house is on Jasmine Street, and we've actually done a lot of research about this family and and about sort of what that house was all about. And in 1945, right after the architecture studio was built, we have pictures of a victory garden through the front yard, and we've put in a huge vegetable garden through the whole front yard, and we have Aubrey St. Clair's architecture sign that used to be posted in front of the house. We have it in the front of the house just to show the history. So we've actually loved being part of the history of that, much more than Ross St. Clair did. So.
Speaking of still living members of the St. Clair family, Beverly St. Clair, who has the same birthday as me but is 20 years older, is now 90 and lives on Hawthorne Street. She still goes to Laguna Health Club. That's why I'm going there.
Can you tell us, you mentioned Rin Tin Tin. Do we know who brought him back from World War I? And then, so one of the Sinclairs was directing movies that he was in, but I'm not sure. I guess from what I remember, he was found during World War I in Europe and then brought back. But
Let's see, I'll have to find.
well, it said they called him Renty.
It was Rin. That's what they
Oh.
they called him Rin Tin Tin.
Oh,
Yeah.
I know if we mentioned Rin Tin Tin right now to kids, they really wouldn't know because
That's
it was a
probably
show.
True.
It was a show that some of us watched when we were kids, but
I watched Rin Tin Tin as a kid, and I have a little story. My grandparents built the Coast Inn started in 1927. Prior to that, my grandfather was a manager of a hotel in Victorville, of which Rin Tin Tin would go to stay. That's what my dad told me anyhow. I wasn't there. So that was kind of neat. And then as far as the St. Clair, I went to school with Margaret St. Clair, and I knew Ross. And then towards the end there, I helped Bonnie out, so I've stayed in your home.
I love that, and it's funny because then we had another famous bunch of German Shepherds in Victorville when Roy Rogers went there, and he had Bullet and Bullet's kids. So
This is just a piece of trivia about Gordon St. Clair and Beverly. Their eldest grandson was named Nicholas, but at some point, I think in his late teens, he legally changed his name to Malcolm.
In the back.
here we have a question from Leah, or a comment.
Thank you. I do have a question. I'm sorry I came in a little late, and I don't know if you discussed it, but the relationship with Roy Rabe, who, of course, was a painter and worked with them. Could you talk about that a little bit? I'm interested because I have one of Rabe's paintings, and when I read the Historical Society newsletter, it mentioned him, and I had not known that connection. Anybody could talk about that? Be great.
I'm Lindy Narver, and I work. I'm the librarian/archivist for the museum.
Can you put that up to your mouth?
I'm sorry. I'm Lindy Narver, and I'm the librarian/archivist for the Laguna Art Museum. I hate these things. So, and if you want to contact me, I can probably give you some more information. He was one of the founders of the Laguna Beach Art Association. He was also head of the Festival of Arts for a while. Rob was, and very prominent in the early Chamber of Commerce too for the city, and also the Playhouse too as well. So I do have some more information. Well, it was a pretty tight community here in Laguna, and so everybody knew everybody in town, William Wendt, Frank Kuprian, they all knew each other, it was just a tight community there, and everybody just knew everybody in town, So,
Yeah, Eric, we would love to hear a little more about the art.
Yeah, I'll tell you a little bit more. I think also just to add it, because they were members of the Artists Association, which is of course the precursor of the museum, which celebrates its centennial next year because of the founding of the Art Association in 1918 by Anna Hills and Edgar Payne. One obvious relationship between Rabe and St. Clair is simply that they were members of the Artists Association. St. Clair's significance in terms of helping to establish plein air, the plein air arts movement in Laguna Beach, is that he's commonly referred to as a co-founder of the plein air arts movement, along with William Lees Judson, who was the founding dean of the School of Fine Arts and Architecture at USC. They were considered the two that first brought students out of doors down to the seashore to paint outside, painting on plein air, which means outside. So as far as his art techniques and the use of watercolor, which seems to be a little bit more predominant for St. Clair than some of his contemporaries like Kleitch or Wendt, that mostly worked in oils, is that His work smacks a little bit, just like William Lee's Judson, smacks a little bit more heavily influenced by what we call sometimes the school of Corot, but otherwise known for a village outside of Paris on the Loire River called the Barbizon School of Art. They studied that, and they were also somewhat influenced by the last vestiges of the Hudson River School, which was the first great American landscape painting school, which was established on the East Coast.
A lot of the plein air painters went to school in Europe. They spent it in France, the Académie Julienne, the School of the Beaux-Arts, and they also, the Art Institute of Chicago was a big influence. The New York Art League was another big school in New York for artists, and a lot of them, that's how they all met. They met through the schools and things like that. So that's why you might see Norman's work looks a little more European than, say, the real California or what we established out here. Okay.
There's another photograph that you know, you couldn't show everything tonight, but there's a wonderful, whimsical black and white photograph of Edgar Payne, who picked up George Hurrell as a young man at the Chicago Art Institute, who was listening to a lecture from Payne, who was on his way back to California from a couple of years in Europe. He was driving. He took his car with him to France, all the way from California. He drove through Taos, New Mexico, to New York, put it on the ship, took it to Europe, drove around, did his paintings, brought the car back, had a lecture, series of lectures scheduled at the Chicago Art Institute, and was dragging his wife and young daughter along with him the whole time, and really kind of felt like he might be a little bit better off if he had a young man to assist him with some of the duties if the car broke down and whatnot. So George Hurrell, one of the world's most famous photographers, and certainly the one who commanded the most of the motion picture industry, Payne brought to Laguna Beach, and there's a wonderful photo of him pulling up in the Ford, the 1920s era Ford, right up to Herb and Mary's house, right alongside it, because that's where he first lived. I think it's in some of the books. It's published in some of the books.
Thank you,
Yes,
Eric. Eric Jessen. And I wanted to bring up, we have Francis Cabang wants to ask something, but okay, just a minute. Some people come to Laguna and don't understand why we have a lot of European-looking buildings, but that was because some of the guys had been over in World War I and seen buildings in England and France and thought it was charming, and they came back here and actually built similar homes, which a lot of the other towns in Orange County don't have.
Oh, this is pertaining to Mr. Rabe. When did he make the transition to insurance? Because his son Macaulay wrote our policy before Markham and Roy Peacock. I don't know that. I can't really say. And then I found an invoice dating 1954 in the office of a significant partner, Pereira, that was partner of St. Clair. And it was blank because my dad would never obtain his services, you know?
That's interesting. If any, I think Glenna, here we go. We have to talk straight into this.
Would you hold it for me, because I want to, I am an inveterate Googler, and all I needed to hear was H.C. Whitwer. It's with a W. And he was a short story author. Some 60 comedy film shorts were based on his works, most from the mid-20s to 1930, the year after Whitwer's death. So that all fits with, what we've been talking about. And it also says that there was a big lawsuit between Harold Lloyd and Whitwer. That that Whitwer accused Harold Lloyd of pirating the plot of one of his biggest hits, The Freshman, from Mr. Whitwer.
My grandfather was Nick Ish, who had the general store and post office. And when Norman St. Clair first came down in a stagecoach, he pulled up at the post office, and it was not in the summertime, the hotel was closed, so my grandfather gave him the keys to the hotel and gave him a place to stay, and my grandmother fed him at their dinner table. And years later, my grandfather had a little small rental up on the hill called the Paint Box because so many artists had stayed there over the years. And I do know that Malcolm and the boys spent summertime there with him.
Wow, that's pretty neat. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Looks like a lot of us didn't really know much about the St. Clairs, so we've really learned.
That's for sure. I think we should give a round of applause to our speaker and everybody else that participated. I would like to remind you before you go that to pick up some of these coupons from the Lumberyard and the Tortilla Republic, and sometime come out to see us at the bungalow on a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday between 1 and 4 p.m. We do change the exhibits regularly, so you're not seeing the same thing if you haven't been there for a while. And please join us as membership or as a friend. And we're glad you came. We'll hope to see you at our next meeting on September 7th when the topic will be Pancho Barnes. Thank you very much.
We are planning to get a new roof in July, so you might see some activity in July, hoping a roof's coming. Thank you, everybody.